Hello, new RAs. This is Matt Schultz, Residence Director for Monroe and Belden Racine Halls. Welcome to the summer modules, Module 1 Development. For the new RA track, we're going to jump into community development. So we're going to chat about all the ways in which developing and building a community is a part of your role as an RA, and what that really means. So bear with me because I haven't done a lot of these presentations, and I'm going to try to make it as engaging as possible when it comes to hearing my voice over a recorded PowerPoint. So yeah, here we go. So like I said, throughout your time as an RA, you're going to hear a lot of the word community or the term community development or community building. I'm sure you've already heard it pretty often in the Spring Leadership Series or even in our recruitment process. Um, so throughout this module, we're going to go ahead and explain what those mean and what your role is in creating a successful community on your floor. So what is a community? Well, this picture to the right here of one of our Monroe RAs last year and their floor is a great example. So by definition, a group of people sharing a common purpose who are interdependent for the fulfillment of certain needs, who live in close proximity and this is important, interact on a regular basis, who share in defining expectations for all members of the group, assume responsibility for meeting these expectations, and who are respectful and considerate of the individuality of others in the community. So obviously, this is a group of people living on a floor with a common purpose, right? Who are respecting the dignity of one another, and that manifests in lots of different ways. But ultimately, folks who are making a choice and conscious decision to interact on a regular basis and be in community. It's one thing to live on a floor with other people, and another to be in community with a group of people. Um, so within residential education, your community as an RA includes all those residents who live on your floor and all the residents who make up your residence hall community. So it's not just the fourth floor, like in this particular photo, but also your entire hall is a part of your community. Though you will have probably more unique and personal interactions with those residents who reside on your floor, you'll still also have interactions with people while on rounds throughout the community and any large scale events you host. So, anyway, so what is community development? I don't know. Well, do you know? Well, I'll tell you right now, I guess. I guess I do know. So, the process of shaping the environment, of building on the experiences and needs of members, both individually and collectively, or creating the attitudes and developing the skills necessary to progress towards the realization of those conditions which make up a community. So that's a fancy sentence for basically saying that it's the process of creating an environment where the values and goals of a community can be met, where people can kind of their needs are fulfilled, but they're also engaging with one another. And as RAs who are predominantly working with first year students, and not just first year students, but much of our campus are first year students, it's especially important to begin creating an environment where students feel like they can get to know one another and feel a sense of belonging on not just on campus but at the Paul in general, and maybe in Chicago for our out-of-state students and students who don't live near the city. It's important, and it's probably the most important part of your role, aside from managing crisis, is community development. That's why you're here. So throughout the school year, you will help facilitate community development through lots of different methods, which we'll go to in greater detail a little bit later. So your role is a facilitator, right? You're going to wear many hats, like the individuals in this photo, the good old CMCRAs from last year. You are your community's primary facilitator, which is one of the many hats, like I said, you're going to wear as an RA. Facilitator is someone who helps a group of people understand what the common objective is. Living on a floor, getting to know one another, assisting one another, taking care of one another, being in community and looking out for each other, spending time together. You're the captain of this ship. That is your community, and your hope is to help your residents form those bonds as the facilitator, and really play a role in that process. A good facilitator is concerned with the outcome of your community. You really My hope is that all of you as new RAs are really, really hoping that your community can feel like a tight, close-knit one by the end of your time as a first year RA or first time RA. You're concerned with how the people within your community participate and interact with one another. So you're not just concerned about um, the extroverts of the group and spending time with them, but you're looking for those students you don't see often. You're concerned about whether they're engaging in community or if they've found connections and have made connections with others on the floor. Um, Finally, the process of developing a strong and welcoming community. So you care about how it's done, and making sure that folks are being brought into certain situations that might not be brought in, or that you're creating a space or putting on events or initiatives that are inclusive, that you know aren't just tailored just to one particular group, but really, really, truly open to your whole floor. And sometimes your residents aren't going to know if something's really an event for them, until you actually physically reach out to them one on one or knock on their door, ask them to be at an event. Those are the small things that good facilitators do in this particular role. So, what are some of your responsibilities as a facilitator of building or developing community? Well, you're responsible for understanding the goals of the community and department. So, what are Res Ed as a department? What are our goals for community development? Um, Keeping the group moving forward. If there are any issues within your community and you want to resolve them and help the group move on, um, you know, your hope is that as issues arise, you're working through them, pretty instantly and following up with residents as they occur, and working with your peer. You might have a co-RA and specifically your supervisor to kind of triage these issues and make sure you're providing support. You know, at the end of the day, you could have a couple of issues on your floor you're kind of juggling all at once, but you have a lot of people in your corner to help you make sure that you're able to best serve your residents. Involving everyone in the community. Is everyone invited to participate in initiatives like we just chatted about? Can you help residents make connections with other residents? Perhaps they haven't talked to each other yet, but they're both interested in a cappella, or they're both interested in, you know, doing, experiencing a service immersion trip, or being involved in Greek life. Um, as the facilitator on your floor, it's important for you to know your residents by name and story. And the most crucial part is the name, but the second part comes with time, and that's understanding your student's story and what they're interested in, what they're looking for, what classes are they taking, what are some of their struggles. And you're not going to know every resident, um, fully. And you may not know every resident's story by the end of your first year, and that's okay. That is realistic. However, you strive to know every student's story on your floor so that you can build those connections when they might not be making them themselves. Finally, making sure that community decisions are being made democratically, and so that your community has an opportunity to make decisions around maybe initiatives that they want to see, floor events that they would like. Maybe you're looking to do some sort of floor swag, or make some sort of video. Whatever that looks like, making sure that it's not always you that's just making decisions to do things on your floor, but you're bringing your residents into that conversation. At the end of the day, you are here for them. So maybe after your fall quarter in the winter and spring, you ask them what kind of door decks they would like to, what kind of theme they'd like on the floor, or what kind of sorts of initiatives and events would they like you to put on specifically for your floor moving into the final 2 quarters of the year. Something to think about. So what does community have to do with Rely? Well, some of you are like, whoa, what's Rely, man? I don't even know what that is. Some of you are like, yeah, I've kind of heard of Rely. We've talked about it in spring training. Well, Rely is our programming model. It's kind of our guideline for how we uh, educate students in Res Life, and within our halls. So it's not explicitly stated, but it's a basic expectation that everyone, not just our RDs and professional staff, but our student staff, are working to build a thriving, positive, and cohesive community where residents can learn and grow. Ultimately, those are the goals of our department, is to make sure that we're all educators and giving students opportunities to learn, not just vicariously or excuse me, serendipitously in the hall where something happens and it just happened randomly and I learned from it. That's going to happen. However, there are also moments where RAs are putting on initiatives where students have an opportunity to learn something new for, for perhaps the first time. They may be engaging in a topic for the first time, and that's our role in the halls when it comes to Rely. Um, Rely really encompasses everything that you are doing within a residence hall already. Your informal and formal interactions with students, and the events that you're putting on for your floor. It encompasses all those things. It's naturally incorporated into Rely. Like it says down here in blue, if you don't build community, who's really going to show up to your initiatives, right? So Rely isn't just about putting on initiatives; it's about building up the community first, right? And then they will come. So, assessing your community. What does your community want? What do they need? To implement a successful Rely event or initiative, you need to make sure that you are understanding what your students want, what your residents are really looking for, or maybe what's like a particular need on that floor in that moment. Is your floor going through a lot of roommate uh, conflicts and mediations? Um, Maybe it was something around um, identity or inclusive language practices or something specific happen on your floor where maybe it would call for more education or focus around that area. What's happening in the world. Um, One way to do this and assess your needs is to think about your own experience on campus. If you've lived on campus as a resident before, utilize the like interest inventories. You can set up a Survey Monkey or do a Facebook poll if you want to. Whatever means or tool you can use to kind of get the interests of your students. Um, One of them, the old-fashioned ways, put out a suggestion box. Those definitely work. RAs have done those in front of their halls, especially in the first couple of weeks of the quarter. Talk with people, listen to people, do the five-door plan. It's something I always talk to my RAs about. Every day or every week, at the very least, every week, you knock on five different doors. Try to knock on five different doors, chat with the residents very briefly, and ask people what they want to see. Did they come out to your last event? If they could have any event on the floor that they would be interested in coming to, what would that event be? Just ask. Or look for any community partners or excuse me, patterns or red flags. So, like I said, what's going on your floor that might be like, oh, we should probably talk about this at an event, or I should really kind of program around this, or maybe post flyers about this particular topic to address it because we've been seeing a lot of issues around this thing. That's certainly one way to begin to focus your Rely initiatives. Consider any academic issues or what's on the calendar, what's coming up. Midterms happen pretty quickly, right when we start the quarter, a few weeks in, and we're already in midterms. What does that look like for our residents, especially residents who are brand new to the quarter system? Pay attention to visual hints, so things you see on doors, things you see posted either on post-it notes or whiteboards. Door decks sometimes get moved around, or students make their own door decks. What are you seeing? What are they interested in? So, Rely. Let's really dive into it. What is this? Well, what is Rely? It is a learning initiative. It's how we approach our work in the department, and it replaces what like a traditional programming model. So, a traditional programming model at most institutions as RAs is like a do this type of program, then do this type of program, and here's the months you're doing them. And it's pretty laid out. Um, so our Rely programming model really is tailored to give you as an RA a lot of autonomy around what you're hoping your students are learning, and what you're hoping your students, are gaining from living on your floor. And we really want to make sure that you feel like you are kind of at the helm of that experience. So there are a couple of methods by which you can engage students. One is formal interactions, informal interactions, events. So like the photo you see over here to the right is more event style initiative where folks are coming to a specific thing. a distribution of information. So maybe you're handing out small flyers or pamphlets around a certain topic. Passive display of information. Those are like flyers or poster campaigns. If you've lived in the halls, you've probably seen a few of these. One that notable one is our Res Ed poster campaign on inclusive language practices, and you've probably seen those flyers. Lemonade stands, which are our tablings that you've probably walked past if you've ever walked through a residence hall and seen a table there with some staff. Um, those are a style that we definitely use. So, RELI, in case you didn't realize what the acronym was, it's Residential Education Learning Initiatives. And it's through this that students will be given the opportunity to build skills and learn from one another. Specifically, things that they probably wouldn't get if they were living off campus. So, foundational concepts. Where does this RELI come from? So, it's been designed around this. Res Ed mainly trying to directly influence a student's personal growth in the areas outlined by the specific learning outcomes. All staff members in Res Ed are empowered to be educators, like we talked about before. That's definitely a core concept of RELI, that we're all educating and taking a part in this. That we intentionally design and facilitate an environment that promotes learning through a variety of strategies, which some of those strategies we mentioned above, and that we are concerned with students' learning related to their academic success at DePaul. So at the end of the day, we're also focused on supporting students' main purpose for coming to our university, which is their academics. So how are we supporting academics? How are we supporting their learning and ensuring students are being successful in the classroom? A lot, RAs plan initiatives around these types of things. So, okay, I know this has gotten a little wordy, but this is the final, like, really wordy slide. So hopefully you're hanging in there with me. So what are the learning outcomes of RELI? What are we, as a department, really hoping students get from programming? What are we hoping to get from events? Well, we want students to be able to identify strategies for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Understanding how to balance their life a little bit from their academics and their personal life to the things that they've got going in terms of extracurriculars, and along with their physical wellness. So, balancing what their wellness looks like for, in a collegiate setting is brand new for a lot of our first year students. And so that's one of our main ones. Identify and access campus resources. We want, our RELI initiatives to be something where students can go, oh yeah, I know where this office is or this resource is on campus, or who to contact about this particular situation because I learned that from my RA or from a tabling that I passed in the halls or something. That's definitely one of our major learning outcomes. Defining individual contributions to the community. So we want students to self-author. We want them to feel like they understand what it means to live in a community and contribute to that. What it means to be living civilly with other people. What it means to learn how to challenge a roommate and engage in conflict, but do so with civility. What does that look like? These are all skills that we want our students to walk away with after living in the halls, which is also a part of why we RELI plan. And finally, to describe how the needs of others in a residential community really influence the behaviors and relationships that exist there. So we want students to be able to identify and understand that other people have needs in their community too, and those are important. That all influences how the community forms. It's not just my way or the highway. As a student, like, living in community means so much more than that, and it's really easy for a resident to silo themselves and not have to engage with their RA or anyone. And that's certainly a way that they can live through the residential experience. But our hope is that through our RELI programming, these are the things that students are walking away with. Understanding the needs of others, being able to understand how they contribute to a community space, understanding campus resources, and how to live a healthy, wholesome lifestyle. All right, so finally, let's talk about some RELI resources and examples. So before you all start freaking out, just know we are definitely going to dive into Rely planning and all the nuts and bolts of like how you do it, how it works on your staff, and what your requirements are every quarter. We're going to jump into all of that in the fall. So don't worry about that. But in the meantime, here are some helpful contextual things to kind of get you um, a small taste of what this looks like. So going back to kind of our strategies for Rely planning and creating Rely initiatives. So we have formal and informal interactions. Some examples include a winter quarter resident interview as a formal interaction. So in the past, MUB staff actually surveyed some of their residents and recorded it to help plan initiatives. That was a formal interaction that they scheduled to do with their residents. Another formal um, interaction would be floor meetings and roommate contracts. Those are things you're already going to do as an RA. So floor meetings at the beginning of the fall and winter quarter, you're meeting with the folks who are new to your floor and engaging with them around community standards and policy and how to engage. That's a formal meeting. As is the roommate contracts. If you lived on campus, at some point your RA meets with you and your roommates to write down and document those things that you agree upon in your room to have a successful year with your roommate. That's a formal interaction. An informal interaction, for example, are while you're on rounds. When you stop and visit resident rooms or say hi or stop by an event or you're out in the lounges. Those are informal interactions you're having with your residents. Sure, you're in a formal setting, you're on call and walking around, but you're these aren't necessarily scheduled interactions that you have. Another informal interaction style is using just social communication through various social media networks. So Facebook, Instagram, GroupMe, Snapchat, however it is that you decide is the best way to communicate with your floor outside of email, oftentimes can be a really fun, engaging way to kind of continue to build community. It's also an informal way. You're interacting with your residents. So you see some examples of that through Facebook Live and Instagram posts to the right of this. All right, events. Those are those physical things we were talking about, those things that you actually go to. There's something big happening in the courtyard or on the first floor lounge or in the lobby. So here's some examples. There was a yoga and yogurt. RAs in Seton Hall brought in a yoga instructor and served yogurt parfaits to promote healthy eating and lifestyles. Belden had a progressive brunch. Let's see. UAC had a blanket build where they found a children's group home in Chicago area to make blankets for out of fleece. I think many of you have seen these types of blanket builds before. There's also been a vegan awareness initiative where instead of regular pizza at a pizza party, which is very common in our halls, that the RAs in Clifton Fullerton went with a vegan-only vendor and ordered pizza specifically so folks could learn about vegan choices, especially if they were non-vegan. And to the right here, you'll see a bunch of different types of initiatives that have taken place, whether they are educational or social in nature. These are all initiatives where students were invited to come to a specific event and learn about a particular topic and be there in person. So, all right, passive displays of information. So these are also great ways. Sometimes you might have an idea around a theme that you want to really kind of communicate with your floor around, or the entire building. Some examples of these passive displays include kitchen safety. So RAs and MUB created a kitchen safety flyer that you see right here in the yellow to kind of review proper kitchen use and just making sure students are aware of how not to start a fire in the kitchen, how to clean up after themselves, especially in a community kitchen. There's also the Move Out campaign where RAs in Seton Hall made a creative series of flyers featuring the RAs themselves around what Move Out looked like and how to prepare and have ask questions of their RAs, highlighting specifically main questions that their students might have, which is really creative. Or the community service opportunities. Here on the left, RAs and CMC created a series of informational flyers around different opportunities on campus. You can see the one here is highlighting the Community Peacemakers program. All right. Finally, lemonade stands or tablings. We like to call them lemonade stands in Res Ed. So an example you actually see here to the right is in MUB, where the RA sat in both lobbies and engaged residents in an activity around gender pronoun usage, and it was designed to educate residents on inclusive language practices for a cookie. So it wasn't just take a cookie and take a flyer. It was, hey, sit down with me and practice this particular sentence using these particular pronouns, and let me explain to you why this is important. And so engaging students in an activity at a tabling can be very effective because you're in a heavily trafficked area. So making those engaging is a fantastic way to go about it. Fill up for Fest. So prior to Fest, UAC RAs ordered a bunch of pizzas for residents to chow down on, and discussing like harm reduction tips, especially going into an event where a lot of students end up using alcohol and other illegal substances. So just kind of talking about the importance of being well fed and yeah, other things like that. Love yourself. Residents were recorded in the lobby of Clifton Fullerton explaining why they love themselves. RAs then turned these recordings into a video and posted it on their building's Facebook group, which is pretty cool. Again, an example of being in a stationary place in the lobby where you can catch a large group of people as they are entering and exiting the building. It's also a very, very effective way to plan RELI initiatives. All right, so timeout, hold up. So this is just the beginning of a wealth of knowledge, right? Of all the types of things that you can program around and focus on. This is not all there is. Also, I don't, like I said, want you to freak out or think too much about this. RELI initiatives are not about trying to reinvent the wheel and try to come up with something super original every time. There's actually been a lot of great things done that you can put your own flair on and add your own swagger to, I guess, but you don't have to completely reinvent something. So use what's been done already and as like a starting point and go from there. It definitely will save you time and stress, of course. And then program with the city of Chicago. We are in, we call ourselves the Catholic Urban Vincentian Institution. And by, urban institution, we are really in the heart of this city. I mean, with the CTA passing through with 2 campuses, I mean, this is a very different institution. A lot of students choose to come here for that reason. They want to be a part of the city. So don't compete with Chicago. Very often there are events and things going on in other parts of campus or downtown or throughout the city that you might find very interesting and want to bring residents to. That's totally awesome too. You can plan RELI initiatives where you're engaging residents off campus in the city. We highly, highly encourage that. All right, so just a quick couple of resources. The interwebs has a ton of stuff. Specifically, I wanted to highlight these 3: ResLifeNet, ResidentAssistance.com, and Pinterest. Gosh, I wish all these existed when I was an RA, but now they do, and it's just a hodgepodge of great programming ideas, bulletin board ideas, door decoration ideas, anything you can think around the RA role. These websites have tons of great content. So I highly, highly encourage you all to take a look at those over the summer to gain some ideas for your floor, and just start thinking, about some creative ways to begin building community on your floor. All right, so that wraps it up. You finished. Hooray! So we're not officially done with your first module. These are the next steps. So I'd like you to review the article that we attached below here. It's called The ABCs of Programming, and you can see it attached to the folder. So review that article, make sure you read that, and then we want you to review the reflection prompt for new RAs and submit at least a minimum of a 1-page double-spaced reflection. Remember, your specific RDs are reviewing your reflections. Again, we don't want you to stress too much about them, but we do want you to just kind of reflect on these different concepts as we go throughout the summer. So thanks so much. I hope this was informative for you, and feel free to reach out to me or any of the RDs should you have any questions. All right, thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.